If we want to drop our addictions and compulsions for good, we must learn to dive deep within our being to address the unmet need, the core pain, or unresolved trauma that the addiction is trying to save us from. What if I told you that everything you've been told about addiction is wrong? This month, a lot of people are going to try and fail at NoFap and No Nut November, and not for the first time either. When this happens, you'll be told that you lacked willpower, that you just didn't want it badly enough, or that there's nothing you could do about it because an evil corporation is hijacking your brain chemistry for profit. But what if it's something else entirely? In this video, we're going to get to the core of why we struggle to drop any compulsion or addiction and provide a powerful strategy for actual long-term change that you can begin to implement right now. Let's jump in. Our society views addiction as either a moral failing or a purely biological disease. They tell us that we're either irresponsible and lacking in character, or that addiction is due to chemical imbalances in the brain, that certain stimuli can overwhelm our brain's reward system and lead to addiction. However, now we know from research that both of these widely held views miss a crucial point. Addiction is not just about substances or individual behaviors. It's about the unbearable pain and suffering that drive people to seek some form of relief in the first place. A study on Vietnam veterans helps illustrate this point. Estimates suggest that as many as 1 in 5 U.S. soldiers stationed in Vietnam were either addicted to heroin or at least using it regularly by the end of the war. However, approximately 95% of them stopped using heroin once they returned home, and that's without any treatment and without experiencing withdrawal symptoms. Among the 5% who did continue heroin use, most had pre-existing substance use issues or lived in environments where drug use was prevalent. Many other studies corroborate this finding. They show us that addiction is largely context-dependent and that it arises as a coping mechanism. The soldiers needed a way to cope with the intense fear, trauma, and boredom of war, and the heroin provided temporary relief from that unbearable existence. But when they returned home, that was no longer the case. That's why buckling down and forcing yourself to abstain for a month or do a 90-day streak simply doesn't work long-term for a lot of us. We may be able to use every ounce of willpower we have to get through those 90 days, but if we don't address the underlying pain that caused us to seek a way to cope in the first place, then we're doomed to fail. It's not a lack of willpower or self-control that led us to failure, but a misunderstanding of the underlying issue. This is why, even if by some miracle a person is able to quit an addiction cold turkey, they'll oftentimes find themselves addicted to something else. Think about the stereotype of people in Alcoholics Anonymous developing a cigarette or excessive junk food habit. If you find yourself dependent on something to be okay, you're not a bad person, you don't have bad genetics, and you're not broken. Addiction is not an individual choice, but a response to pain and suffering. The addiction simply distracts us from and helps us cope with the pain inside us. It numbs us for a while so we don't have to think about it and can continue living. That's why I tried and failed to do a NoFap 90-day reboot more times than I can count. I wasn't able to drop my adult website habit until I created a safe space that allowed me to come face to face with my feelings of inadequacy, the unconscious hatred and rejection of my body, and the underlying fear that I'd never be unconditionally loved and accepted just as I was. Look at any comment section of an adult website and you'll clearly see for yourself those people are in deep pain. While these sorts of harmful addictions make this pattern easier to spot, the same cycle can be seen in a lot of other, more socially accepted ways to self-soothe and dissociate too. Lots of people have these sorts of things that they need in order to keep the pain buried. We may spend all of our free time playing video games, always have the TV on or music playing in the background, spend hours a day consuming YouTube videos or podcasts or scrolling through social media, or have a few drinks or some weed after work every day. As long as we're able to continue functioning in our day-to-day life, we consider this dissociation normal. But the truth is that we use these things because without them, our suffering would drive us crazy and we wouldn't know what to do with ourselves. If the purpose of an activity is to avoid feelings, if you find yourself pulled toward it the second you feel any boredom or inner discomfort, then it is likely addictive. If we want to drop our addictions and compulsions for good, we must learn to dive deep within our being, to address the unmet need, the core pain, or unresolved trauma that the addiction is trying to save us from. Trauma is highly correlated with addiction, especially childhood trauma. These early experiences leave lasting impressions on our psyche. Trauma often creates feelings of shame, isolation, emptiness, or unworthiness, and the addiction develops due to the temporary escape we get from those dark feelings. This applies to the experiences we normally associate with the word trauma, such as those within the adverse childhood experiences framework. But we must remember that such frameworks are limited and incomplete. Trauma is not what happens outside, but what happens within, and a wide range of experiences can have a traumatic impact on the mind and body. For example, there's no mention in the ACEs framework of systemic discrimination, which can definitely be traumatizing and lead to feelings of powerlessness, fear, shame, or disconnection. Don't let external authorities tell you what is trauma and what isn't. Pay attention to what your body is telling you. The trauma and the deep pain within ourselves is real and valid. This pain is incredibly scary to look at, so it makes sense that we'd want to look for things to distract and numb us, so we don't have to experience the pain within our psyche. Any addiction that develops is not the problem, but a symptom of a deeper problem. So how can we start to address those deeper problems? The very first step is creating a safe space to reconnect with ourselves, a place where we can safely explore our thoughts, emotions, and our past. Rather than placing judgment or berating ourselves for what we're experiencing, we can create a space where it's safe to ask ourselves, what emotion am I trying to escape right now? The solution that worked for me isn't a quick fix, but it is incredibly simple. Whenever I noticed an urge, I would use that as an entry point to investigate my inner experience. I'd try my best to set aside all the judgmental chatter of the mind and approach the present moment with curiosity. I would check in with my being through writing about what I was feeling, thinking, and experiencing. The exact prompts I still use every day can be found below the like button if you'd like to grab those for yourself. The act of writing teaches us to sit with those emotions, and by giving them a label, it helps us create a sense of separation between the feeling and the feeler, the thought and the thinker. Through this process, we gain insight about ourselves and realize that we are much more resilient than we give ourselves credit for. It also helps us learn to treat ourselves with kindness. Self-compassion means recognizing that your attempts to drop a bad habit have failed simply because you were suffering. Healing begins when you develop the courage to allow yourself to feel whatever you have been trying to escape from and to observe it almost from a third-person perspective. If you decide to quit cigarettes, you can expect intense cravings for cigarettes for a while. That is physiologically normal and expected. However, since we don't like those unpleasant feelings, we usually try to fix them as soon as possible. Instead, we can slowly cultivate the ability to sit with them and see what's underneath the craving. This simple process of checking in with yourself will begin to show you patterns and triggers that lead to addictive behavior. This will help us develop healthier coping skills and find better tools for emotional regulation. I've found journaling to be particularly helpful for me and added a link for the journal I use below if you'd like to grab it for yourself. But you don't have to write if that process doesn't resonate with you. The key is in applying words to your inner experience. Talking into a voice recorder app on your phone, a therapist, or a trusted loved one can help too. As long as you're able to feel safe enough to fully show up with whatever is happening within you, you'll be able to get to the core of those compulsions and to the pain underneath. Life is complicated, and it's not our fault that we were hurt, but I believe that we all have a responsibility to do what we can to heal. Doing this work not only serves ourselves and makes our lives a lot better, but it serves the lives of our children and other loved ones, as well as everyone who we come in contact with. Some of us will need support from a therapist or addiction expert to help us, but research on neuroplasticity shows us that recovery is possible for all of us. All it takes is creating a safe space where we can get to the core of whatever unmet need or inner pain the addiction is trying to save us from. This slowly teaches us that we are strong enough to handle whatever we are experiencing, and over time, the addiction dissolves all by itself. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And make sure to check the description for more resources. Until next time, safe travels.